The 70s marked the dawn of video gaming as a commercial and cultural phenomenon. What began as rudimentary experiments in computing blossomed into an industry that laid the groundwork for the multi-billion-dollar entertainment sector we know today. This decade witnessed the invention of iconic games, the establishment of foundational companies, and the creation of technologies that shaped the future of gaming. By examining the origins, innovations, and cultural impact of 70s video games, we gain an understanding of how a niche curiosity became a global powerhouse. The seeds of video gaming were sown in the laboratories of the 50s and 60s, but the 70s saw the medium's first significant commercial breakthroughs. The decade began with the emergence of arcade games, driven by engineers and developers experimenting with ways to transform computer displays into interactive entertainment. One of the earliest and most pivotal milestones was the release of Pong by Atari in 1972. Designed by Nolan Bushnell and Alan Alcorn, Pong was a simple tennis-like game where players controlled paddles to bounce a ball across a screen. Its minimalist design and addictive gameplay resonated with the public, catapulting Atari into the spotlight and setting the stage for the arcade boom. Prior to Pong, however, the groundwork had been laid by earlier experiments. In 1971, Computer Space became the first commercially available arcade game, designed by Nolan Bushnell and Ted Dabney. Based on the 1962 computer game Space War, Computer Space was groundbreaking but struggled to capture the public's imagination due to its steep learning curve. This early misstep taught developers an essential lesson. Accessibility was key to success in this new medium. Arcades became a central hub for video gaming during the 70s. Games like Pong and later titles such as Space Invaders, released in Japan in 1978 and internationally in 1979, attracted players of all ages to coin-operated machines. These arcades, often housed in shopping malls or standalone venues, became social spaces where players could compete and interact. The simplicity of early games, both in graphics and mechanics, was their strength. Limited by the technology of the time, developers focused on creating engaging gameplay loops rather than relying on elaborate visuals or narratives. Titles such as Breakout, also developed by Atari in 1976, introduced the concept of single-player gaming, broadening the appeal of arcades beyond competitive play. Another hallmark of 70s arcade gaming was the introduction of the high-score system. Games like Asteroids, released in 1979, incentivized repeat play by allowing players to immortalize their initials on the leaderboard, tapping into the competitive spirit and social dynamics of arcade culture. While arcades flourished, another revolution was brewing in the home. The release of the Magnavox Odyssey in 1972 marked the beginning of home video game consoles. Created by Ralph Baer, often called the father of video games, the Odyssey was a primitive device by modern standards. It used interchangeable cartridges to load simple games like table tennis, skiing, and haunted house, and required players to apply plastic overlays to their television screens for added visuals. Although the Odyssey sold modestly, it demonstrated the potential for gaming beyond the arcade. Atari soon entered the home market with the release of the Atari Video Computer System, or VCS, in 1977, later known as the Atari 2600. Featuring interchangeable ROM cartridges and joystick controllers, the Atari VCS offered a more advanced and versatile gaming experience. Early hits like Adventure and home versions of arcade classics like Pong helped cement the console's popularity, making it a cornerstone of home entertainment. The 70s were a time of rapid technological advancement, which drove the evolution of video games. Early systems relied on analog electronics, but by the mid-1970s, developers had transitioned to microprocessors. These components allowed for more complex programming and graphics, paving the way for increasingly sophisticated games. The decade also saw the emergence of genres that remain staples of gaming today. For example, Adventure in 1979 introduced the concept of exploration and puzzle solving in a virtual world, laying the groundwork for the action-adventure genre. Meanwhile, Space Invaders popularized the shoot-'em-up format and established tropes such as wave-based enemy progression. Another innovation of the era was the use of artificial intelligence. While primitive by today's standards, Games like computer chess in 1977 showcased how computers could simulate human-like opponents. These developments hinted at the potential for deeper interactivity and storytelling in future games. Although the video game industry was still in its infancy, the 70s saw gaming begin to permeate popular culture. Arcades became gathering places for young people, fostering a sense of community and competition. The concept of gaming as a leisure activity was born, and iconic games like Pong and Space Invaders became household names. However, the rise of video games also sparked debates about their societal impact. Concerns about addiction and the moral implications of violent games began to surface, foreshadowing controversies that would persist in the decades to come. Despite these concerns, the novelty and excitement surrounding video games ensured their continued growth and acceptance. The 70s were a transformative decade for video games, marking their transition from academic curiosities to mainstream entertainment. Through the efforts of pioneering companies like Atari, innovative creators such as Ralph Baer, and the enthusiasm of millions of players, video games became a cultural and economic force. The technologies, design principles, and business models established during this period laid the foundation for the modern gaming industry. This demonstrates the enduring appeal of interactive digital entertainment. As we look back on this formative era, it is clear that the 70s were not just the beginning of video gaming. They were the beginning of a revolution,